Dragon Slayers in the Nephilim Colosseum. The third thumbnail my Dragon Tier patrons voted on was the Coliseum. This one changed the most from the thumbnail to the final image. That's due partly to the workflow, but also how many new ideas barged in while I was thinking about it. For the workflow, I started with a 3D model of the arena. It's a 6-sided structure, 6 being the number of man who was created on the 6th day. Throughout this project, you'll likely see this number repeated often whenever less than savory activities are taking place. It's not just humans that battle in this hexagonal coliseum. It's regularly bloodied by monsters of all shapes and sizes. For the safety of the audience, a moat helps to keep the violence well contained. Once I had the general shapes blocked out, I searched around for a composition that I liked, and made a few different renders to use as pencil and color layers for later. Comfortably seated on enormous silk cushions in the Imperium, or Pulvinar, a corpulent giant has been thoroughly enjoying the spectacle. He's waited on by a continuous rotation of slaves who bring him an endless supply of delicacies and expensive wine. The blood-drinking fallen angel has attended this event to ensure their desired outcome. Many wanted to simply kill the captured shipwright, but this was too perfect of an opportunity. This human represents the very last thread of his faith. The shipwright and his family are the only ones left who still believe in the prophecy that the Watchers fear most. That one day a descendant of Eve will crush the great serpent's head. This show is the perfect chance for the people to watch the last believer die screaming, forsaken by his toothless god. Things are not going his way. In the center of the fighting pit, the shipwright, guarded by his faithful dragon-slaying companion Bastion, takes this moment of reprieve to pray. They are surrounded by the fallen bodies of dragons, monsters, and one titanic serpent. Wave after wave of creatures, none of them could have guessed what waited for them out on the sand. A shepherd and his battle-hardened sheepdog, with centuries of experience fighting predators just like them. They knew every one of their tricks, every instinct, and most importantly, every weakness. This fight cost the giant dearly, as each one of his monsters was purchased at a high price, but a spectacle like this will be talked about for years. When all is said and done, it will have been worth every piece of gold. Besides, the insufferable Watchers will still be able to kill the man. Escaping his cruel Coliseum dungeons would require a miracle. I created a challenge for myself when it came to the pose and angle of this giant. In order to figure it out a little better, I went back to the fundamentals. I sketched in a skull, with his head pulled back a little more. Thankfully, no matter how heavy a character is, the skeleton remains a reliable foundation. With the pencils in place, it was time to work on the final drawing. While we let the line work play out, to shamelessly game the algorithm, tell me in the comments what kind of antediluvian Colosseum battle you'd want to see most. A giant versus 10 men, a mega serpent versus a saber-tooth, 2 enormous tortoises racing for a 6-foot-long centipede. And while you're at it, click all the usual buttons. At the time of this recording, this video series is covering the visual development stage of a future graphic novel. If you'd like to check out another story I've made, you can pick up a copy of my previous book, Tellurian, link in description. And you can also get your hands on my personal art book, which is a collection of visual storytelling art I've done over the past 20 years. Finally, if you want projects like this to not only survive, but thrive, consider supporting me on Patreon. There are a few tiers to choose from. My amazing Dragon Tier patrons here get their names in the videos, and they get to vote on aspects of this project. Again, link in description. Okay, on to the color stage. For the background, I'm mostly going to rely on the color and lighting information I was able to get from my 3D model. I purposefully spent some extra time trying to get more useful color information into the render, like the sunlight being filtered through the red shades above. For the characters, as usual, I started with their diffuse colors. With these baseline colors, I can then make all kinds of color adjustments and know that the new colors will remain consistent with each other. Thankfully, because I made some rough models for everything, I had some handy shadow information just laying around. I could use this to make a rough layer mask for the arena to roughly block out where my shadows would fall on the characters. After that, it was a simple matter of polishing them up to match the drawing. I painted some shadows around the fighting pit, and threw a simple sand texture on there for a little more believability. The thumbnail for this image was pretty simple, but I kept introducing story elements that made it more complex. Originally, we'd see a lot less of the arena, but I had a lot more fun with the shape than I originally thought. And as ridiculous as it sounds, at first I wasn't thinking of putting the Shipwright in there, just a generic fighter. That would have been a wasted opportunity. Then, to imply more story, I added more creatures, but after a huge battle instead of before. I'm a sucker for the visual storytelling of aftermath images. The watcher was originally going to be watching with mild interest, but putting the Shipwright in there gave me an opportunity for more performance. All that said, it ended up being a lot packed into one image. So at this stage, I was moving around from issue to issue, just polishing things as I found them, making adjustments. I was particularly concerned with separating the foreground Pulvinar with the background arena. Like I've said before, this stage feels like balancing stones. For one of the last touches, I had to make sure we really saw the aftermath of this fight, so the heroes are completely drenched in blood. So there we have it. The Watchers thought they had the opportunity to crush one of the last living believers in the god they hate most, to the sound of cheering crowds. Now, the only sound in the Coliseum is the laughter of their gigantic host. Under the protection of his exhausted dragon-slaying companion, Bastion, the Shipwright takes a moment to offer up a prayer of thanksgiving and a request for the strength necessary to take on whatever his captors have in store for him next. You can help this project. Click the buttons, leave a comment, go to my website, buy a book or a print, follow me on stuff, sign up on Patreon. Thank you all so much for the support you've already shown. It's been overwhelming. And a special thank you to my Dragon Tier patrons. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.